You're listening to Rio Radio, the nationally trusted name in real estate investing. We dig deep to discover investors' why in real estate. If you want to skip all the BS and get in investors' heads, you're in the right spot. Be one of the thousands to check out RioRadio.com.
Would you rather lose a key employee unexpectedly or deal with somebody that was a problem employee until you couldn't take it anymore and you fired them?
Oh, man. The lesser of two evils. I would much prefer that I lose someone unexpectedly than to put up with the black hole that's created by someone that's inefficient, that cannot figure it out, or that I couldn't lead or coach in the right way, or that we couldn't lead or coach in the right way.
Welcome to Rio Radio with Kyle Aho.
Thank you. Third time's a charm. Wow. Kyle, in the words of the immortal Kid Rock, all summer long in northern Michigan, is it as good as it sounds?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. From the last week of June to the last week of July, it's as good as advertised.
Now, it doesn't look like you have ever escaped the northern Michigan peninsula. Is that true? You had a stint at a college that was maybe a little further south. Am I right there?
That is correct. That is correct. That was my only time outside of the peninsula, and I left to play college hoops downstate. We call it downstate, below the bridge. Little softer winters. It's a little easier. And I was gone for 6-7 years, and then returned back to the Upper Peninsula, Michigan.
Now, I did a little digging here in Marquette County. Is that right? Or township? Or what is it called? Marquette? Yeah,
Marquette is the city. That's where the university's at. But Marquette County is the larger of it's the largest county in the state of Michigan, and that's where we reside. That's where we work. That's where we do pretty much everything.
And Marquette is known for a really large piece of iron or something. A bridge or something like that, right? Like to celebrate the steel and iron workers of days past.
Yeah, they've got, they've got still a port, and then they've got an ore dock, and they've got an old ore dock that runs right through the center of town. It sits in a really unique location. That's been probably the mainstay for the longest time, is the mining industry and the iron ore. So you could still go in and watch ships load, watch them leave, and so that still is today one of the bigger of the manufacturers. But now there's quite a few other industries that have built out because of that.
Interesting. Okay, so the stint playing hoops. I also noticed that you somehow ended up as an assistant coach. Is that right, on your college team?
That's right. Yeah. So I actually stayed, and I think it happens to a lot of guys and gals that play at the next level. Your identity's so wrapped up in what you do. And so for me, I was going through doctorate school, and one of my mentors had actually been an assistant coach while I was there while going through doctorate school. And so I stayed on staff, and, I pushed through. There were some long days going through school and still being an assistant coach, but so much of what I still enjoy to do, and I still I'm a varsity basketball coach up here in Michigan. So much of what I like doing is helping kids realize their potential and their ability to work hard through coaching. And so I stayed on.
My apologies for not introducing you as Dr. Kyle Aho.
No.
Okay, so now you got your doctorate in physical therapy, if memory serves here, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
What happened, man? Why aren't you forcing people to call you Dr. Aho? I would.
Oh man, I never did, and I believe that still should be respected for the medical professionals that are MDs or DOs. But to me personally, it was never about that. It was always about actually spending more time with athletes and training and staying in rehab and doing the right things, right, getting an education. And so I let that all go. It was actually 2020, so I've been out for 5 years. My business partner and I both left corporate work at that time. My wife had left previously, and was our head of property management at the time, or during that interim while I was directing a couple physical therapy clinics and working as a physical therapist. And I loved it. It just did not offer the freedom that real estate offered. And so it was the right time.
I think when you speak at the REI Summit that you should introduce yourself as Dr. Aho.
Yes.
And then get into the story. I mean, I think that would be Everybody like, whoa, doctor right here in front of us.
Or whoever's emceeing that, you just stop them when they're introducing you, and everybody's about ready to rip up in applause. And you're like, actually, it's Doctor.
Oh man, I couldn't do it.
You should have Owen MC it.
I will break in. I will break in and
do your introductions.
There we go.
I like it. Send Brandon a text after the show, and I think you got a shot.
All right, we're gonna make this happen. Okay, so got into as a doctor into physical therapy. Did that for a while, liked it. Didn't necessarily feel it was an equitable trade of your time for a paycheck. So you kind of got trapped in the cash flow quadrant of the S, right? So self-employed, you're only able to work a certain amount of hours, and that's all you can get compensated for is those hours. What happened to make you realize this? Was there a person, place, or thing that you heard, saw, talked to that gave you an indication that maybe there's something else out there?
Yeah, there totally was. That's a great question. So I got on the journey of real estate in 2011. I was very naive. I was very young. I got into investing at I was 19 years old, and so I understood a little bit of it. And as I worked through the doctorate program and as I worked through as a physical therapist, it was great money. It was a great gig. It was a great profession. And there came a time and place, and actually the COVID was the triggering factor of this, like a lot of people, in the moment where everybody's hours were becoming less. I was still working, still providing. And there was a conversation around our insurance being cut. My wife was pregnant with our first child. And at that moment, I remember walking away from the conversation and saying, that will be the last time I ever feel hamstrung by somebody else's decision.
And
that was it. Picked up the phone. I called a broker that had previously had a really rundown 15-plex. It was no longer listed. I that day called them and said, "Hey, whatever happened to that off-market 15-plex or that 15 that didn't sell?" And rest is history. That snowballed into.
Whoa! Wait a minute. Are you saying that your very first property you ever bought was a 15-plex?
No, I'm sorry. That was the moment in 2020 where it was the deciding factor to leave. Yeah. First property was just a cookie cutter duplex. Just as simple and straightforward as they get.
Okay. And Ted, you had a question.
Well, I remember, I believe we were talking about this. You did that one with your business partner, and you guys actually you guys remodeled that all by yourself, correctly?
Correct. Yeah. That's been our MO since the beginning of time. Is we've been the ultimate.
He gets like 5 sentences worth of airtime, and they're littered with errors in speech. We keep our editor on the payroll.
Hey, you know what? Owen poured a really good old fashioned this morning, so I'm blaming it on the drink.
It'll keep you on your toes.
Yeah, let's talk about the duplex. How'd this all happen? You had a partner to start things off. That's not a common path that people take. I would say from all of our interviews. What was the deal with that?
So the first one was independent. The partnership began in 2020. So that run up from 2011 to 2020 was a personal portfolio. That first duplex, actually, as naive and as crazy as this sounds, I think it's a great reminder to anybody that's looking to start. I didn't know anything about anything in real estate, and I heard a guy. I was working in the lumberyard as a summer help and at Ace Hardware, and I heard a guy tell one of my coworkers that he was selling a duplex for $25,000. And I didn't know anything about financing or anything about loans. I had to learn all of this process as quickly as possible because I was going to college. I was going to play hoops. And
was this like in Detroit or something?
Yeah, Little Detroit, Marquette County. At that time, it was in a very tough spot here in the county. There was an Air Force base that had closed. There was a lot of housing available at a discount. It since has changed quite a bit. But so that's how it all began, was hearing that and sparking a little bit of interest, thinking, oh, man, I could fix that up. That'd be a great gig in the nights, the weekends. And that was actually the first purchase.
Did you get employee discounts at Ace Hardware for lumber that you could just take over there?
That's
a good hack.
That is.
Okay, so the duplex, how did it go? $25K. How did you buy that thing? Did you have savings? What was that like? How'd you finance it, or did you buy it cash? What was the deal?
Great question. So I did not have cash. I had to go get a loan. And as a 19-year-old, I didn't realize how tough this is going to be, especially a 19-year-old without a job or without a consistent job. I went to a very close friend. She has since passed. She was the VP of the bank. And she said, here's your terms. You'd have to put 20% down, and then in addition would offer an escrow that would cover the payments for an entire school year, college year, until I got back if it didn't rent. And so every moment of every day was spent working construction, working at ACE as much as possible to get that money to pay for the down payment. And I believe it was like October 1st of that year. Actually, I was down at college. I had to come back for the closing and had saved up enough bucks. So it was just conventional loan. And she gave a very interesting piece of advice that changed my career. She said, if you want another loan, you got to pay this first loan off. And at that time, Freddie Fannie was, I believe, like 3 or 4 in your personal name. This was 2010 or 2011. And that changed my trajectory because I never questioned her. I never even thought twice about it. So every moment I could work, I saved it and I paid that loan down. I think I paid it off in 2013, the first duplex. And that snowballed me into having the availability, having the savings, having all of those financial, let's say the financial understanding and the backing to be able to go and purchase the next one.
How much work did duplex that it was 25K need? Was it a lot? Did you have to redo almost everything?
You know what? Not as much as you would think. They were built like bunker houses. They were built very well. They were government built in the late 60s. It really, there were tenants in place. It was like windows. It was furnace repair. It was some minor stuff that they were already lived in. They had poured concrete basements. It wasn't like it was a big uplift. It wasn't like the scenes you see on HGTV of downtown Detroit. It was a shift in the marketplace of loss of employment because of an Air Force base closing.
Oh, okay. So, and Marquette proper has about 21,000 population. Is that right?
Yeah, the city itself, yes.
Or the surrounding, like the surrounding MSA. What are we talking population wise?
About 75 without the university, without the second time home buyers. It's about 77, I believe, was last year. So small, not a metro by any means.
Now we're going to talk more about your more advanced stages in your real estate investing, but I did note that and from conversations I had with you and just doing some research, it looks like you over time have bought and renovated and either sold or kept 100 properties or over, probably well over that by now. That's a lot. Like, I mean, in a town that size, especially, are you just going to go until you've remodeled every single house in your surrounding area? Or do you not run out, I guess is where I'm going with this, in a 70,000, 75,000 population area?
Yeah, great question. So the mission has been consistently to change the affordable housing across the county. We built a hybrid team to be able to do that. So we own and operate the construction company. We own and operate the property management company. At this time, we have not ran out of fixer-uppers. In the way that we look at it is, as long as we've niched ourselves to take the worst of the worst, we continue to find project sites that are not possible for the average mom and pop or the average investor or somebody that wants to do a live-in flip. And so those continue to exist, and they're not simple cookie cutter projects, but somebody has to fill that need. And even in a population of 77,000 in the last census, I believe there was like 7,500 vacant places. And most of those are beyond repair for an ordinary person.
Is the population in your neck of the woods still declining after the Air Force Base shut down, or has it remained somewhat stable after the exiting of a lot of that workforce?
Yeah, it's actually picked up a little bit. We're seeing an influx of secondary home buyers. It's a climate haven. We're up on Lake Superior. It's beautiful in the summertime. So we're seeing a lot of secondary home buyers. It's interesting because the base closure was in 1995, and it didn't impact, across the county. I think it lost 15,000 jobs, which is a lot of employment in an area of 77,000. It's regained itself independent of the Air Force Base because it never did reopen. And so it slowly has seen an uptick. There's manufacturing that's come into the area. They're utilizing some of the old base space. And then Marquette itself has done a very good job of what they consider to be continuing to grow, even though it's not at a metro scale.
Kyle, when it comes to buying those condemned houses, those really bad conditions, these $25,000 properties, what's some of the challenges that you have found, but also what's some of the benefits you found in those properties?
Yeah, the largest challenge is the fear of the unknown, because inevitably every one of those projects has a quirk. It's kind of like HETV, right? Every single one of them is going to have that moment where you're like, oh my goodness, we just blew the budget. And those are the moments that you have to be a little more prepared for. You've got to be able to weather some storms. We've had all sorts of them. I could give you an endless amount of examples. We purchased a large mobile home park in 2020, and within a month of closure, we broke a master water main. We got a phone call. It was like a day after Christmas. We got a phone call and they said, hey, you just lost 375,000 gallons over the last couple of days. We're like, oh, no way.
That's a pretty
That
penny.
sounds like a lot.
It sounds like a lot, right? And so I say that only because I know the worst of the worst comes with those hiccups. And so trying to fix that at 15 below on a February day becomes an expensive task. And so those are the challenges. The upside.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I do. I do know what you're going through.
It causes gray hair.
So most of the properties I've taken on have been condemned properties. And when people ask me like, oh man, what are you taking these on for? I'm like, well, first off, you got to have thick skin, but you got to budget, for at least a 6-month renovation in a lot of cases. Unless your crew's just, money. You also, I find that the benefit with those is that you can budget for everything, but when it doesn't need everything, then it's a win. Versus maybe buying something you think is really good and paying more money, but then you find out you need a furnace, plumbing, sewer line, something else, and you're like, oh, here we go. But when I remember I bought a house for like $12,000 and 12 or 11, I don't remember, but that needed like $80,000 renovation. But when I was going through, I was like, oh, I can salvage the water heater. I can salvage the electrical here. Like there were certain things that I budgeted for. I'm
astonished that there was still a water heater and electrical wiring in that place.
Me too.
After it had been vacant that long,
because it was vacant for 8 years, and it had people living in it.
Wow.
But for me, it was like I'm getting wins because I budgeted for everything. Versus, like that place you bought on 120th and Pacific. You had that property, and then you thought it was good, right? Mm-hmm. We thought it was good, and then there was things that were secretly crept up on you, and you're like, oh, it blows the budget out.
Yep.
And so there is some benefits, I think, to buying the condemned. Plus, when you're done, if you're keeping it, everything is new.
Yes.
You don't have to budget for a lot of things for the next decade because you've replaced everything, right? So they do make good rental properties because it's like doing new construction.
Okay, I want to follow up on what you were mentioning about your friend that is no longer with us, but she was a VP at a bank, and she told you, in order for you to keep doing this, you're going to have to pay off the previous loan. And you mentioned that was kind of a mindset shift. Now that you know what you know, I think what she was saying is if you want financing with my bank, you're going to have to do X, Y, Z. But now that you've done this for a while, do you think that advice she gave you set you back progress-wise?
Great question. It did if I knew what I know now. Mm-hmm. The challenging piece as an 18, 19-year-old going to play college hoops, she recognized it at face value that I had to make sure I didn't get over-leveraged and couldn't fix the furnace for somebody in mid-December in the Upper Peninsula, Michigan. And I didn't realize that at that time. And so I think it was just a crucial step for me in the trajectory of where we go that I didn't get over leveraged too quickly. Mm-hmm. And so it's an important piece that now looking at it, sure, the leverage would have helped me and I could have moved along. I didn't stop playing college hoops. I didn't stop buying, but I didn't have the leverage to be able to do it at scale. That may have just been too fast down the tracks.
Yeah, I think, she was probably looking at, okay, here's a kid. He's really ambitious. He's going to go play basketball. He's going to buy a duplex. He's never done this before. Yes, he worked at Ace Hardware for a summer. But what if he doesn't pull this off? And let's face it, I mean, $25,000 is not a big risk for a bank, or less than that because you had to put 20% down. But I would say that was probably good advice, but it's probably a good thing that you have learned since then that, okay, I can do this, and I've proven that. So did they end up playing ball with you in regards to financing other properties that you went on to purchase after you proved that you could handle it, and you did one, then the next one after you paid that off, and they were like, okay, you're good. We see what you're doing here.
Yeah, they totally did. It was a great relationship, great partnership with them, and they actually were the lender on purchases in 2013, 15, 17. It took a while to save the money, right? As a young college student, my wife at that time was my fiance. She even got involved. She had a little better job in 2015. She got her first loan. I talked her into that piece, and so she was from East Lansing buying real estate in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan because she had the availability of a loan. So they continued to be a great partner, and we no longer do as much business with them. They've changed. They've went through a merger, but it was a great relationship, and they were a big step in the first few years.
I also feel like that like sometimes you work with banks and they're all gun ho on whatever, like maybe they want flips or maybe they want commercial, and then that part of their portfolio fills up, and then their mindset changes, or the bank changes which direction they're going. And so you got to have multiple banks to work with. So when they do pivot on, maybe that part of their portfolio is full, you're ready to go with the next lender.
That's actually a great point, and you're exactly right. Especially community banks and like regional banks that are smaller, and they have a lower legal lending limit, lower balance sheet for number of loans they have out. If they get overweight in certain categories, so like if they're lending on, say, a whole bunch of office space, or maybe they're really heavy in residential real estate, that is something they have to rebalance. It's not that you're a bad borrower or a bad risk for them. It just may be that there are too many loans on their current books that are exactly like what you're going to continue putting on there. So they're like, hey, you may want to look for a new lender at that point. And that's an important question to continually communicate with your bank about, is like, how are we? Like, continuously check in. Don't assume that you can just keep doing this in perpetuity, because the bank may have a business plan that they say, okay, we're too overweight in this type of loan. We need to shift into other types so that we can diversify a little bit. So let's fast forward a little bit. You mentioned casually a 15 unit after you kind of had a wake up call in 2000, like around COVID time. Was that when that happened?
That was, yes,
Okay.
2020.
How much are we talking here? You bought a $25,000 house or duplex. That's $12,500 a unit. Were you able to beat that on the 15, or was this a little more expensive?
A little more expensive, but very close. You're going to laugh because it still was in a place where real estate was cheap, and it was like this for a lot of people in a lot of markets in 2020. I may forget the exact number, but it was either 225 or 250 for the 15 plex. Now, there were only 4 units occupied, and there was a tremendous amount of deferred maintenance. You're talking roofs, full interior scopes, everything missing outside of the property and the structures. There was a lot of work to be had. And Ted actually recalled the story perfectly. My business partner, college roommate, college teammate, Caleb, was willing to partner on this first 15 plex. And we said, hey, we're going to take every bit of PTO we have, and we're going to do this on our nights and weekends. And I'll never forget, I'll share this.
You guys didn't have kids yet, obviously.
We didn't have kids, but we had.
That's an important factor in this whole story.
Okay. That is. We each had a wife that were both pregnant, and both painted away, helped us in every phase of this, made sure the paint was approved for a pregnant wife through Sherwin-Williams. So just so we don't get any slack back from that. We didn't put anybody at risk, and our kids are healthy.
Lead-based paint,
no lead-based paint.
Okay. All right.
Exactly. So we did that full remodel.
They're like, the women are really emotional right now. We're going to go paint.
Yes. They did a fantastic job.
We're going to get hate mail for that.
Did you say 250,000 for a 15 unit? And this was this in a rough area?
No, it wasn't. It was actually a part of the felon friendly or the prison release program, but there were only 4 tenants in place. It was dilapidated, deferred maintenance to the point where, again, kind of what Ted had alluded to, there weren't a lot of buyers in the market. The amount of work necessary and to even just see the vision, I think, was overwhelming to the vast majority of people. My wife and I actually looked at that same 15-plex in 2017, and it was too big for our appetite at that time. And it sat on market for a year and a half, went off market there in 2019, and then ended up, we got an opportunity at it in 2020.
Okay, let's dig into this a little more. So you figure out a way to take this bad boy down, and bad boy also applies to the tenant class that's in there, let's say. They're all felons. I mean, the court has proven this. Did you go in and evict the 4 tenants, or were you like, hey, if they're paying, we can get a little bit of cash flow while we're working on this. Let's just make sure they're not strapped when we're walking through the next door unit. What was that like, dealing with legacy tenants on a property that was obviously an eyesore and probably problematic for the local, area? What was the story there?
Yeah, it was very challenging, but you are spot on in your assessment. Every nickel mattered to us. I mean, we had no money, and we funded this entirely in cash, outside of the conventional purchase of the property. So we kept them in place, and we still do that in many situations. We were also at the backside of the moratorium and the tenancy not having to pay. So there were so many variables that if somebody was willing to pay, we were like, okay, you're staying. And so that was an interesting.
I don't know where this cash came from, but it's green and it's not counterfeit. So I'm putting it in the bank. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it really was a pass through, right? We were handing it off to Sherwin-Williams as they were handing it to us. So it was such a necessity. There were only 4 units occupied too at the time. So it wasn't like some of the purchases that we've made since where you're inheriting 30 tenants at a time so it didn't make it as strenuous. We kept them in place. We started the renovations. They all had separate entries. There actually weren't any common spaces outside of some hallways on this one. So it was a relatively easy uplift, and we didn't have to disturb the tenancy. And one of those tenants is still with us today, and the rest have moved on. Yeah. And not all of them were in the felon release program. So,
okay, I was going to say, are they still on the straight and narrow, or you just don't ask, don't tell?
No, they're on the straight and narrow. Great tenants.
And it's like 2020 this time. So Kyle's like, I'm an essential worker. I can come and work on this place.
Yeah, there you go.
Get me out of the house.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned before we hit record that you've got a newborn, like right now. Right. So what number is this for you?
Like 6 or 7 or what?
Not yet. One at a time, healthy, Ted. We have 3 right now. We have 2 boys, 1 girl, and we just had a baby boy, Augustin. So just March 10th.
Congratulations.
Augustin,
naming after the Masters tournament that's coming up.
Good question. After St. Augustine.
Yeah.
Great question.
And how old are your kids right now? So you have newborn and then
4.5-year-old boy and a 2.5-year-old girl.
Wow. Yeah, you're cranking them out. So is this kind of like the advice you got from the banker where you want to make sure one is paid for before you have the next? How you approach this?
Yes, exactly.
I mean, you're on a good clip with paying off the duplex after 2 years. You're like, you know what? We got to fully fund their college before we move on to the next one, honey. So yeah,
that's exactly the conversation we had: is how quickly can we afford one, and can we keep them all healthy?
The baby factory. Okay, so every 2 years, got it. So, all right, so we're going to revisit again in 2 years and meet your newest newborn. All right, 15plex post-mortem now. You went through that whole thing. This was 2020 timeframe, a little after, and you got it. You had some legacy tenants. 3 are gone, 1 remains, and you've got the rest of it leased up. What does today that property look like? Do you still own it?
Yeah, great question. We've actually kept everything we've purchased outside of 1 commercial sale in the portfolio, independent of the flip division, the single family home flip division. So every multifamily property we've purchased since 2011, we still hold. It came to balloon. We've refinanced. And so it came back at close to 1.1 here the other day. It's done well. It's been fully occupied. We haven't had any issues. We had the major capital expenditures to put a couple of roofs on. Overall, has been a great property.
You mentioned that this one was with a partnership, and that was the first property with a partnership, correct?
Yes. That's correct.
And everything since then has been with your partner. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct. Yeah.
And I always like to kind of deep dive into partnerships. Can you tell me a little bit about like what value each of you bring? And I'll start there.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know what? Caleb has been the ultimate teammate. Him and his wife both have been the ultimate teammates, and they are so different from my wife and I, where we are a very people pleaser, and I hope this comes off the right way. He just has been much better at people management, with being able to remove the element of being a local, knowing people, those pieces and factors. He was running and organizing a large manufacturing plant. He would hire and fire many, many people each year. He just had a different skill set than I had, and still does. And so he came in, him and his wife came in on the ground floor, and all of us on the ground floor wearing a tool belt. The piece that we shared in common outside of our values of let's say Christianity, we shared a work ethic piece that we were going to figure it out. And we gained that trust at the 10 years before, playing college hoops together, living together. So we had a vetting period of 10 years. And that's the part I caution people in partnership. Like, we didn't jump in overnight, man. We had endless amounts of conversations, endless time together, trying to figure out, are we the match? And by the time it got to this 15plex, it almost felt like a no-brainer, because he was looking to not spend 80, 90 hours a week inside of someone else's organization. He was running an Apple manufacturing plant.
This is always fascinating to me to talk about partnership structures. So when you and Caleb were talking about your goals and like how maybe current dissatisfaction with the career path that you had in hand, you wanted to, do something more with it, get some financial and time freedom. Caleb kind of sounds like the axe man. You just use him to do the dirty work. Is that the role here? He's the bag man for the AV rentals organization. Is that what's going on here?
Yeah, he is in a good way. He continues and still does run, or is the head of our property management division, and still is probably the greatest integrator that anybody could ever ask for, with the tremendous follow through. And that piece, being willing to be stern, follow a very specific line, and make sure obviously you're staying within the housing laws. That's an important skill to have in that property management seat. And that's not for everybody. And it wasn't for me. I would allow people to go. I recall a tenancy that I allowed to go for, it was 6-7 months of non-pay with a promise they were going to pay it back at the back end.
Yep.
And it worked. That one worked. But the other 10 times I made those deals, it didn't work.
Okay. So let's say that you find another 15 unit today. Who's most likely the person that's going to find it? Is it going to be you or Caleb?
Yeah, it's going to be me. So Caleb lives in Grand Rapids. His family have now relocated back. And the whole story of our development as AV Rental Company or AV Housing Solution is very unique. They moved up here, lived in a travel trailer. We hustled and DIY'd every single project from that point. When Owen brought up 100-some renovations, that's how we worked endlessly to renovate units. He now is back down in Grand Rapids. The acquisition side, I take a major seat in. We've brought in, now at this point, have expanded our team and have one other gentleman on acquisitions as well. Caleb still is a huge part of that and continues to look properties up and run due diligence, underwriting, all those pieces.
That's what I was getting at. So he's doing the underwriting. And are you doing any underwriting at all?
I am, yes. Yeah, still doing some underwriting, still doing some due diligence. It's such an important piece, as you guys know. It's a piece that multiple people can keep a part of the accountability, because different collection points, right? And my ability to be here, I'm in Marquette County. I can get to the site. I still take that very serious. We're walking a large portfolio summary of 29 properties and 62 units. I absolutely wanted to be on that and involve myself in the due diligence and the underwriting on that.
When I look at people in our local RIA, people we speak to, even Owen over here, every time I look at a partnership, it seems like, the ones that are super successful generally have the person that's the numbers guy, or back end operations, and you have the front,
ops,
ops, and you have the front facing guy, the person that's going to be networking, the person that's out there shaking hands, kissing babies, and the person that's finding the deals generally. And it seems like there's always that really happy medium, the person that doesn't, in the back end, that doesn't want to be the person that's on the podcasts, going to the networking events. And then the other person generally is just the opposite of that. And I find that every time I see a really, truly successful partnership, it's that collaboration. I could just go over example. I mean, probably 20 of them right off the top of my head where I see that. Do you feel that is kind of what you and Caleb are?
Absolutely. Yes. I would completely agree. There has to be a Batman Robin in any successful partnership. And I would completely
Robin was
agree.
fighting right along with Batman the whole time. He wasn't hiding the back end.
Was he though? Yeah. In this scenario, then, are you Batman or are you Robin?
I would say he's Robin. I'm Batman in this specific scenario. And I think if we parallel it to the business sector, right, he cleans up the mess. Like, he's kind of the 1-2, right? And in the way that if we create a storm, if I'm out there purchasing properties and I create a mess, he's got to be the cleanup guy. And that is operational functions. And I believe he is that guy for sure.
Who's the guy who plays the new Darth Vader in a lot of Star Wars? The younger guy?
Oh, I don't know.
You know what I'm talking about? The new Star Wars? I'm going to look up his name. It's your doppelganger.
Oh, Kylo Ren.
Yeah, Kylo Ren, yeah.
What's that guy's name? Thank you.
Kyle Driver? Adam Driver, yes. Do you know who Adam Driver is?
I don't know.
Oh, you got to look him up before the day's done. Sorry.
That was a weird tangent. But
we talked about Batman, and I was in my mind went there, so I couldn't help it.
Yeah, kind of a stretch.
Yeah, I tried.
Okay, so I want to dig into this. So you mentioned in passing that you have, it sounds to me like you have a vertically integrated construction, property management, acquisition, and disposition business. Is that fair to say?
That is, yes.
Was it that way from the get-go? Or did you guys use third-party contractors and then basically figure out that it was like herding cats and you were spending too much money, so you decided to bring it in-house and it was a whole thing? What was that like?
Yeah, so originally we did it all, and we continue to do it all outside of some of the MEP work, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing work. Our initial run up, we had to do everything. We couldn't afford not to do everything, and that's actually the necessity is why we built property management. There were 2 layers there on property management. We didn't trust in someone else to do a good enough job to squeeze every nickel out of every property. on the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
And it mattered so much to us. We operated that way for a very long time, built the systems and processes of that individual division. We were both still working when we brought on our first major hire, and that was repair maintenance construction. And that was a critical hire for us because there's a certain threshold, there's a tipping point where you have to bring that in-house. Otherwise, you're going to pay for it on a subcontractor, on a handyman, charging 125, 150 an hour. And so that was the initial phase.
Real quick to interject, sorry to interrupt, but I really like what you're talking about, because I have found at various times in my life, I've always needed a handyman. I've always needed somebody that can go do stuff like break fix, deal with, tenants that have an issue at their property and they can go handle it, whether it's a minor repair or whatever. Generally, you want somebody that's pretty well-rounded. They can handle minor plumbing stuff, minor electrical, any type of trim, handyman work, that type of thing. So just kind of a general troubleshooter. And I've always needed people like that in my life. And I had a big loss in that category recently. And I think I have at least a temporary solution for that for the time being. And it makes me sleep so much better. Because otherwise you're just like, I don't have anybody for this. I guess I'm just going to get on Facebook groups and see like, hey, who has a good handyman, or start texting my friends and find out. And then you run the risk of them not being available when you really need them if you're not vertically integrated and you're just relying on a third party to handle stuff. So it was always the availability was my biggest problem with that, because some things you can't ignore. There are things that need handled right away. Safety issues, safety, security, those type of things, like emergency, fixes that need done. I like that. So let's please continue on this path. Let me actually just do a fact check here. What does, in Northern Michigan, a handyman that you bring on to your payroll, they're no longer a third party, what do you got to pay them?
Yeah, it's typically in the range, I'd say anywhere from 20 to 30, maybe a little bit upwards of $30 an hour, in that range, where to go hire that same person as an independent 1099 or a company, an organization, you're going to pay 75 to 125, even upwards of that.
And now, are you doing this fully loaded benefits, or is it are they 1099? Like, how does that work when you bring them in-house like that?
Yeah, it's full payroll, W-2s. We don't have anybody 1099 outside of a couple guys on our paint crew. And the reason why is we want them to know they have a legacy or a career type potential with us. At this point, we've got 11 on the construction renovation side. We have what I would consider to be like the Avengers. When you say do everything, our team can do everything. And that's the construction renovation division, independent of the property management. And so we slowly accumulated guys and gals with a wide skill set that not everybody does tile, not everybody does the paint, and each of them kind of fit into a specific seat. But when something comes up, fridge goes out, we have the guys and gals that can go and pull it out, put a new one in, or work on it, tinker with it, get it back in and running. And so that's been exactly like you said, major stress relief of offloading that.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second. What does today's portfolio look like for your holdings? And I do want to not skip over the fact that you did mention, as a real aside or a minor thing, that you flip houses too. What I'm understanding is every multifamily deal that you've bought, you've kept. And I assume, or I'm kind of maybe filling in the blanks here, making assumptions, but are you also doing active real estate stuff like flipping, wholetailing, those things to generate more income that you can then plow back into acquisitions? Maybe talk about that for a minute.
You read the tea leaves for sure. That's exactly the business structure. We've always been in the multifamily space, small multifamily space, into that midsize. And that's been our business model, again, to change the affordability around the county. And we feel that we've done a really, really good job at that. We wanted to supplement it because we hadn't brought on private investors. We wanted to supplement that with an active generation of income through flipping. And we, from 2016 to 2022, every single family home that came across our desk, we were like, no, we pass. And realizing in 2022 that we left a lot on the table just because we said we're not the single family home guys, we pivoted into now a flip division. And so that was a big step for us. It created a little bit of a diversity in our finish, obviously going from a multifamily rentable unit finish to now a mid to high end flip finish, created a little bit of complexity in the divisions. If we zoom out, we hold and own and operate 315 units, and right now we have 5 single family home flips in addition to that going on. And that's a kind of a zoomed out approach of our overall holdings and portfolio.
Okay, that's a lot. So 315 units, and you are, let's timestamp this. So you are what, 33-ish?
33.
Right, okay.
Impressive guess.
Yeah, yeah, just ballparking it. That's the same age as Aiden.
Go ahead and guess his age now.
No, shut up, Ted. Nobody likes him.
37, 38?
Yes, you're right.
Yeah,
37.
Exactly right.
Okay, 11 employees. You have a active flipping business where you have 5 going concurrently. You have 315 units. You've got a property management arm, a construction arm. I always don't like it's an easy question to ask. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now or 10 years from now? But really, you could pivot in a whole bunch of different ways, right? We have no idea what's going on in the current, economic climate that could drastically change. Interest rates could go to 20%. We don't know. But if you were to take a stab in a couple of years, continuing on the path you're on, and with your own ideas and Caleb's ideas about where you want to take this business, what does it look like for you? Do you see yourself still operating in Marquette, in that town or county? Are you ever tempted to go to other markets, either within Michigan or, further than that? I know that's a wide ranging question, but 2 years have passed. We look back. What are you going to say? This is why I feel satisfied with our progress, and what would make you disappointed?
Yeah, we've considered all options, and I would say that all options remain on the table. The question you started with originally is actually the most important factor of this. What can we do in a marketplace of 77,000? Mm-hmm. Because anybody from an outside perspective, I'm going to ask this same question of many of my own mentors or many people that I spend time around that are bigger than us. We have to hit market saturation. There has to be a certain point where we can no longer turn or renovate 35 units a year, which is on pace for what we've done each year over the last 5 years. So there has to be a market saturation. We had not previously to this year, outside of my personal portfolio, we hadn't done third-party property management. I believe that that's a parallel sector that we could offer to third-party clients, and we believe we have the systems and processes in place. So that becomes one of them in particular that we do see ourselves growing into. Here in the local marketplace, we hold repair maintenance. We have everybody on staff to do it. Total team, not including with our construction, we're at 18 to 20 of us total. So we have a little larger of a team to shelter this property management. In addition, there will always be the rundown house on a nice block. And so single family home flip has went on for a really long time. And that's a big reason for us pivoting into it. So you're already kind of seeing our trajectory here as we've moved, just like other people like yourself, Owen, like many of the people that are ahead of us have moved in that direction. We've been talked out of other markets because we lose our competitive advantage. And that's the piece in particular. The moment we leave here, we no longer hold the construction costs to a third of the market. And so we lose our economy of scale. We lose all of those pieces that have helped us build, and we're almost starting over, even though it's the same business if we go to Grand Rapids or we go to Detroit or Green Bay. And so what we look like will be very different in 5 years than we do now. And that might be new build. We're building 2 duplexes this year in downtown Marquette on land that we have. We're towing into different waters in a very slow pace just to control the options. I believe it's Jocko. He always says, keep the door open. Either Jocko or Leaf, and it's coming from my relationship with Tarl. Keep the door open on options.
I like the name drops. These are good.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
And here's the thing: all 3 of those are such unique names that it's impossible not to know who you're talking about. Like you just mentioned their first name, and everyone knows who Jocko is. Everyone, I don't know who Leaf is, but I'm sure he's a baller. And then what was the last one? Who was the last one?
Tarl Yarber.
Tarl, yeah. I've never heard of or met anyone else named Tarl other than Tarl Yarber. So
it's kind of Ted.
Yeah. Leaf Babin, co-author of Extreme Ownership, and he's actually a partner with Tarl in a jiu-jitsu gym. So yeah, just as a side note.
No big deal.
Well, kind of speaking with the growth, but Kyle, where do you know the end is? Is there a point where hey, if I reach this point, then I know I'm where I want to be. I'm comfortable. Is there an amount of income that you want to bring in? Maybe that market is the market that you stay in, but you're bringing in, $60,000-$70,000 in cash flow because of what you got going on. What point do you rest and relax and retire or invest into the stock market with all the money you had? What's the future?
Yeah, that's a fun thing to think about. I did liquidate my 401k, not right before the other day, by the way. So
Ted and I have both done this also, by the way.
yeah,
So I think you get to a point where it's like the benefits far outpace the drawbacks of doing that. And you'll get like lambasted by financial advisors. And they're like, oh, you should never do that. And you're like, well, look what I can do over here.
yes, exactly. Investment in your education, investment in real estate, or investment in yourself, I believe is 20x comparative to the market. And I don't want to wait till I'm 60 to be able to touch that money.
Amen.
And so, you know what? It's interesting because a couple years ago, I would have had a very different answer to this. It's changed so much because we can control what exactly we want to do. And so there isn't a moment in time where I say, man, I really dislike it. Sure, there's phases of that. And I think I would dislike retirement in certain phases. And so to me, I don't have an end in sight. I don't have a finite number in sight. Comes from a service type approach to this is how much of an impact can we make first at the county level and then on the employees, right? As we grow and as we scale, the unit count has lost the effect that it had from 2 units to 10 units. You go to a holiday party now, and I almost cringe when someone asks the question of like, how many doors? I say, oh, man, I wish you wouldn't ask. It's almost now, how many employees? Like, how many people can we impact their lives at a service type level? Not only on the employees, but also the customers, right? On the tenancy, and like, can we change their life? So it falls on a book I read a few years ago, The Gap in the Gain. I don't believe that I would ever be satisfied retired. And I believe Caleb's the same way. And so we've got a long runway ahead of us. I wish I had a better answer for you, but
some people are really like definite and they know that answer, you know, and some people are like, you know, I don't
as long as you still enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, if you would have asked me in 2019 or 2020 what number I had to hit and I was just like going to coast, at that point, the number in my head is like, I just want $20,000 a month in cash flow coming in. And then I can just do what I want to do, not necessarily retire, but, you know, just be able to focus on life and focus on different types of growth, you know, focus away from real estate. That's what my goal was back then. I can't say that's the answer now, but, you know, at that one point, for a couple of years, that was the answer. And we grow and we rotate, we change, right?
I listened to I don't know if you Kyle, if you ever listened to the Better Life podcast that Brandon Turner has, but he had a guy on a couple of weeks ago named Trey Stone, and he was basically an operator out of the Houston, Texas market who had accumulated 6,000 units and was like a baller. Like he was one of the largest apartment owners in the city, and that's Houston's a big city. And he basically hung it up for 10 years, liquidated, sold off all of his stuff. And he was like, I want to spend time with family. My kids are only going to be young once. This is what I'm going to do. Took 10 years off. Now he's back as of about 2 years ago, I think. And he's just like crushing it. You know what I mean? Like now that he has this bank of knowledge that he accumulated after going through all those reps of accumulating that many units.
And he paid off a ton of his property.
Yeah,
probably.
you listened to that too? Yeah,
no,
it was.
But I just assume.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great episode, but like, you know, it hits different when you're at different stages in life too. So your answer now may be way different than 10 years from now. And I felt way different at 40 than I do now that I'm 50, and I'm looking at life through a different lens where it's got, you know, different things mean different things to you at different points in your life. And I think your goals just change so often that it's hard to make those like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And it's like, I don't know, man. Like I could be missing an arm then. I could have a debilitating disease. Whatever. There's life deals you cards and you just have to react. I think the message here is your enthusiasm and the mission is to keep cranking out affordable housing, changing the landscape of your market when it comes to basically housing affordability, and then just doing it as long as it's fun, right? And keep cranking out babies every other year. That's a good plan. You're increasing the population of Marquette on your own. I mean, we can all say that, right? Bring in new housing, bring in new babies, adding jobs. You know, got all these employees now, so you're single-handedly affecting the Marquette market. I mean, I can just say that, right?
Yeah,
that's part of the mission.
Guy, on a lighter side, okay, so I love to ask this question, especially people who do property management. But in regards to management and walking into properties all the time, or maybe stuff that you're buying that you're going to potentially doing flips on, have you ran into something that's just totally crazy, like crazy things you found, crazy stories, or anything that's radio worthy to bring up?
Oh, too many. I don't even know where to begin.
You can just go down the road because these are always just make us laugh.
Oh my goodness. Everything short of a dead body at this point, from handguns to machetes to every type of possible weapon to loaded guns, unloaded guns. One of the coolest finds recently, we're going through this house and there is war pictures everywhere. It's a 1920 fixer-upper, single-family home, but the tenant was brand new, probably lived there 2 years, never touched anything. And the people had passed in this house. And so we're going through it, and the tenant didn't open any boxes. And we get underneath a stack of boxes. We pop this chest open, and it is the memorabilia of all of this guy's World War II, including this Nazi flag, signed, dated with the deceased colonel, like the person involved in this. And it was one of those moments in time where you're like, whoa, that was a serious deal.
Wow. It's so weird that you bring this up because we were just, Ted and Aiden and I were just talking about Call of Duty and World War II, like the whole, like we were super into that at one point. And then, I like World War II. I'm a huge World War II history buff, so that would be super interesting. I mean, Nazis, no, thumbs down, but that's a cool find. And in the property management vein, or maybe the flip houses that you bought, have you dealt with a lot of like hoarding situations and things like that as well?
Too many of them.
Mountain Dew bottles of piss.
Oh man!
Yeah. What are some of the disgusting ones?
We find every piss bottle is Mountain Dew now.
You know what? We just did one. Just did an entire place filled full of bottles. Some of them hit hard because some of them are so sad.
Dew? We found that
they were Mountain Dew. They were Mountain Dew.
What is it about Mountain Dew bottles that people just feel they need to pee in them? I don't understand.
Because they're green and
why are they never? Why isn't it ever like Coke or Pepsi or whatever? Like
never. You are spot on. Exactly. Sometimes it hits hard because you realize that there's a mental health crisis to it as well, right? And we were in one a year ago that didn't have plumbing, and I don't know how long they lived there, but they didn't have plumbing, and so they listed this duplex, and we get in there. And they were like, "You can't go in. You can't go down the basement." I said, "Well, why not?" I said, "It's full of feces." And sure enough, it was full to probably mid-boot level. They were taking a 5-gallon pail and they were throwing it down the steps. And that's why we couldn't go in.
I've never had that one.
Yeah, worst we've ever been in. And to make it worse, the day of closing, they shut the power off and the pipes break and floods the basement. Oh. So now we have 3 feet of water, 2 feet of feces, and an absolute mess to clean up. It was probably the most disgusting. We did not call a plumber. We had lost every relationship we have in every possible subcontracting space for eternity. We did what we know best. We DIY.
Man, dude! I've never heard a story quite like this.
You hooked up a pump, and then you pumped it into the city sewer gutter.
There was so much stuff mixed in that we had to shovel. So it was so much clothes and boxes and everything soaked at that point. Oh man, it was an experience. It was an experience, one that I'll never forget, and also one of those moments where you realize you got a place in the market because you created a niche that nobody else was going to fix.
Yep, the poop niche.
Yeah.
Well, Kyle, we've gotten to the point where we're to the world famous section called Failing Forward. And it is in our beautiful voices that makes that part.
By the way, fun fact: we do this live every time. Like we don't have a soundtrack that just has that recorded.
Now, for the first 100 and some episodes, we did.
Oh, we did.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. We were still doing it though.
But we still did it.
They did the voiceover
because the people in front of us always laughed.
This is raw footage. Okay. All right. Please continue.
So, Kyle, in the Failing Forward section, this is where you had a failure in life or business. And because of that failure, you grew from it. So it's something that you would never take back.
I would say the most relevant one that comes top of mind is in the hiring phase. And in believing in other people. I believe that I'm an eternal optimist. And I just assume that everybody's going to work as hard as I work, as long as I work, with the same attention to detail and the same attention to the bottom line. And the lesson that we've learned as an organization, Caleb and I, anyone else in our leadership team, is that is not possible without great leadership and continual refinement of the leadership. And so you guys know my background in the coaching space. And I think there's been a learning lesson, continued learning lesson, that you cannot just tell someone what else to do. Mm-hmm. It has to be led and it has to be coached.
Yeah, I agree.
And I have failed so many people. I look back over the last 5 years, we've got a list of retirees. I call them retirees, people that have left our organization. And I was the same way when I was directing in a physical therapy clinic. It hurts every time somebody comes in and says, I'm leaving. Mm-hmm. Or you have to let someone go. And taking the approach of the extreme ownership, that's a failure of leadership. And so I've learned over the last 10 years in being in management specific, I've learned that teaches you a lesson each time. And I would never take that back because of that.
Would you rather lose a key employee unexpectedly or deal with somebody that was a problem employee until you couldn't take it anymore and you fired them?
Oh, man. The lesser of two evils. Oh, man.
You've had both, I assume.
Yes, we've had both. I would much prefer that I lose someone unexpectedly than to put up with the black hole that's created by someone that's inefficient, that cannot figure it out, or that I couldn't lead or coach in the right way, or that we couldn't lead or coach in the right way.
I've found that, similar to what you're talking about, I assume people consume the same things that I do in relation to just podcast knowledge in general, books I've read, experiences I've had. And I assume that everybody knows everything that I already know. And so sometimes I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but it's kind of weird when you talk about things that are just like everyday life to you and people are looking at you like you're an alien sometimes.
I still look at you like that sometimes. That really hits home with me, what you said there too, because I remember at one point I was like, so we have a really successful RIA group here in Omaha. And I'm like, okay, I had this brilliant idea. I'm going to create this group called RIA Nebraska. So create a website, put a lot of money into that, hired a teammate to really be the focus behind that. And then I had strategic partners in multiple cities around Nebraska that were going to create these RIA groups. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to give you the fundamentals. I'm going to create your logos. I'm going to get your networking up. We have a full-time employee that's going to support you. And I'm going to give you all the fundamentals to get your group going. And I had these, which I felt they are, very successful individuals in each city. And they wanted to do this. And in the end, they weren't the right people. Either, they weren't tech savvy or they were too busy. They thought they were too busy in their own business. I'm busy in my business.
Or they just don't care as much as you do.
It's just not, it wasn't, you can't make somebody you, right? Now looking back, the person that seeks you out to do this, that has aspirations, that's really digging in, is probably the more right person than me trying to find that person that fits that mold. I was trying to find people that were already kind of doing it, but in the end, every single city that I tried setting up failed. And I gave them all the tools.
I feel for you. And I believe that I've learned similar lessons along that I actually spoke at the building trade, local high school building trade this morning for that exact reason, because the 45-year-old skilled carpenter has a way and an intention that he is pretty cut and grooved into. The 18-year-old coming out of high school has done a better job in terms of the learning, the culture, the vision, the mission, even if they then leave 2-3 years down the road. So you build them to leave. And essentially that's the college basketball model. It's worsened with NIL, but that's the model, right? Like we build these young adults and then they leave. And you got to pat them on the back on the way out.
That is a tough reality for business owners, because hiring a key employee that is very skilled, knowing that you are
creating your competition.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair to say, but also like they're doing great things for you, but they're very aspirational and they have goals of their own. And maybe they have an entrepreneurial idea, and that they're not going to be with you forever. So it's like, it's so hard because you want them to succeed, but also you would like them to stay within your sphere and affect your life in a positive way. Yeah, that's a tough balancing act. What have you found? Sorry, Ted.
No.
What have you found has been your most successful methods of hiring? Where, like, in looking back on key employees that you brought on board, whether it's for the flipping side, property management, whatever, any commonalities, or is it just random?
It is the 180-degree opposite of random. It's exactly what Ted alluded to. It was all relationship based. All of our greatest employees are all friends, family, relationship in terms of we've built a family oriented business. When we've went to Indeed or we've went to the marketplace to go get somebody, it has almost always failed. So out of the 20 some people, and now we've probably hired, fired, and had probably close to 30 leave. At this point, there's a commonality that it is all relationship based, and they believe in the mission of the company, but more importantly, in our relationship, that we will take care of them, their family, and we will do exactly what we say we will do. And so, yeah, it's opposite of what probably every large hiring firm wants to hear.
You and Caleb are the owners of this whole vertically integrated business platform that you have, correct?
Yes. Yep. We have partners. We have LPs. We've brought that in, and that's been a trajectory over the last couple of years. So it's changed. But from an organizational standpoint, now we have a head of construction management as well that runs that particular division, much like Caleb oversees and runs the head of property management division. So now there's other key leadership positions that also influence the culture, the vision, and the recruitment, honestly.
Do you manage, or does Caleb manage, or do you split on who, like, as day to day, like, here's my employees, here's your employees, or does that all roll up to one of you?
Yeah, there has to be an end all be all in terms of the decision making, but there are certain people that support him in his property management versus people that support me in the seat that I'm in. And honestly, with now hiring or having a head of construction, most people on our construction renovation support our head of construction. So, like, we have a full-time administrative manager. She definitely supports me and is a huge asset to the team. So we each have our individual support systems, and so people report differently to different people.
I remember when you mentioned the part about bringing in people, and some work and some don't. And I remember when we brought in once an employee when I was working for DVG, a local company here that was a flipping company and real estate company, and we brought in a young man. Great worker, hard worker, very intelligent. But within the first, 4 or 5 months, he ended up writing a letter to all of us partners, presenting his business plan about how he should be the CEO and all of us should step away from the business.
Whoa.
Okay. And how he's in a position to take over the company. And he gave all his reasons why he should take over and why we should step away.
Were they well thought out?
It was a very, very well thought out, but it was also a very cocky letter.
Yeah, that's pretty ballsy.
It was way too soon, and that it was also ended up being his resignation letter. Also, in the same, he's like, "Hey, this is my plan. This is what I think. This is where I see myself in the future. And if you guys aren't moving forward with this, I'm going to go ahead and move on."
Wow.
And it was really taking my kid was extremely intelligent, but also he was also a lot to handle.
Yeah,
I can imagine.
Okay. One last question on the organizational topic of vertically integrating your business within your real estate investing. Do you ever feel trapped with having that many employees? And hopefully none of them are listening to this, but like when you build an organization and maybe something happens in your life and you're like, man, they all depend on me. We're going to keep doing this because of that. And maybe it isn't really the direction you want to go. Does that ever influence your decisions on other people's lives and livelihoods being involved in yours now? They're really intertwined. What if you change your mind on stuff? I mean, that has to weigh pretty heavy. And that's what I haven't gone to the level that you've gone with hiring staff and vertically integrating. I've typically outsourced, and I've usually had a handyman or a few of those involved in my life just to handle my personal portfolio. But it's not anything where I'm having to be like, okay, let's have a level 10 meeting and all that until very recently. But what's that like for you as a business owner?
Yeah, I think there's a couple pieces that keep me sane. And the most important piece is we built out additional leadership pieces. Like we talk about in our yearly meeting, like what if I were to pass, right? And I know it's morbid, but I think it's an important discussion to have when you have partners. It's a hireable position. it may lose the same effect that I recruited a lot of people in, but it may lose that small effect, but that could be offset with somebody that's very good at recruitment and very good at marketing and continuing the brand and the mission. So it's a hireable position. We wouldn't have the same growth and accelerant, and maybe the partners don't want that if I were to pass. Like I enjoy the thrill of challenging us as a business and organization, but I don't ever feel a moment of being trapped into the cycle because there is a workplace for all of them. And it doesn't take a bunch of management for them to realize their potential and their opportunity. Like there's plenty across 315 units, there's plenty of work to be had. We could stop acquisitions entirely for the next 5 years and just stabilize. And it may not be as exciting and thrilling for the employees, but it would be a great workplace.
Well, and you mentioned too that you're basically to the point of evaluating third-party property management as an option and an offshoot of this whole thing. And that could lead to, doing third-party work for other people and so forth. I just always like to ask that question because I know, like, I fight with that kind of ambition versus reality, and I know that I change my mind on things at times. And it's when you build an organization, it becomes a living, breathing thing that's bigger than you a lot of times. So I like that you touched on that, though. That's helpful for people to understand the mindset of an entrepreneur that is forced to basically turn into an organization instead of a self-employment. Do you see yourself ever stepping out of the, kind of co-CEO role and basically just operating as an investor? Like, would you ever hire somebody to just be you?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you brought it up earlier in the show, if the enjoyment went away or a disability came into effect or a debilitating disease, we want to be prepared to hire that position. So we're not there yet, right? We wouldn't be able to afford somebody at probably the market wage rate that would be necessary to run as a COO or a CEO, but we could pare down and get somebody very talented in that seat. If I look at it from some of the larger organizations that I watch, let's say like Ramsey Solutions, and I follow them very closely, I think it just in an effort to continue to grow is so that each position becomes hireable. Mm-hmm. Build it to that point. We don't need to be a 100 employee company, but at a certain threshold of revenue and gross profit, more importantly, then we can hire each individual position at a market-based wage.
Well, you slowly see Dave trying to get the people to replace him.
Yes, exactly. He's doing it. It's a 10-year succession plan, right? And maybe that's not my kids like it is in his organization. Maybe it's somebody else, and then we become an investor. The first step would be to get it to a hireable market-based wage, and then you could begin to foresee a succession plan. So we've got a little bit of growth still to get there. And a lot of that, as you guys know, in a growth firm, we're just burning cash, right? Like we're burning cash on the next deal and the next deal. And so there's an element of that we would have to hit a stabilization point, and we're getting there. We're getting very close.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this, but your town of 75,000 that you operate in, it sounds to me like you almost have a stranglehold on the acquisitions here. Is that fair to say? I mean, do you have some competitors? I would assume you have some on a smaller scale.
Yeah, we do. Absolutely. And I don't even look at it as a competitor as much as it is an assist, right? We still pass on things. And you drive down some of these blocks and there's still 80% of them are still run down, almost unlivable situations from deferred maintenance. And so honestly, we try to send those out. We don't have enough people in the marketplace to wholesale them out. We don't have a local wholesaler, right? We're almost on the opposite end. We're recruiting in our employees to then go and invest and fix up a place on a weekend. We've done it with a couple other young investors as well, like hook them up with a spot and say, hey, here's your project.
That's exactly where I was going with this, because when you have a smaller market, and we have, in Omaha, Nebraska, we have about a million MSA as our population.
We just passed them.
And in Council Bluffs, Iowa, which is kind of a sister city on the other side of the Missouri River from us, they have about 70,000 as their population. And I operated there as my entree into real estate investing. I knew that town. I knew it well. I knew every street. I've been through most of the houses. And I got comfortable there, and then kind of ventured into Omaha eventually when I was like, I felt like there was more competition there than there would be if I spread it out over those two cities. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of dig into that, because there's so much or so little competition in some markets that some people end up just steamrolling everybody. And that leads me to the last thing I want to ask you on this topic is, how are you going and fueling your growth from a capital perspective? And you mentioned you've grown your payroll now to, I think you said 11 employees, but is it more than that now?
It is, yeah.
Okay,
It's
so you have between 10 and 20 employees. What's your monthly nut that you have to basically hit from rental income, property management income, construction income, or outflow, and flipping and wholetailing and transactional real estate? Like, what does that all look like? And if you don't mind sharing.
I don't mind sharing at all. It's an important metric, and I'm completely fine being open about it. The month of February, for example, I haven't reported on March, but the month of February was like a $280,000 expense out. Payroll being 60, cost of goods sold 75 to 80 on a monthly basis, which is construction, fixed costs at about a 45 to 50, and so you can begin to see without mortgage and interest. So 280s with mortgage and interest across the portfolio. So there's a high churn rate, and the way that we've continued to do that is making absolutely certain that you're conservative on the front end. You have to have a margin. You have to have a refinance available. You have to make absolutely certain you don't get over the skis, and that's what's allowed us to continue in acquisition.
I would say anybody catching this episode might think we fed you that question ahead of time because you were so well prepared for answering that by memorizing all those stats. This was completely off the cuff, and I just thought of this right before I asked you. So that's pretty impressive that you knew those cold.
Yeah, I spend a ton of time on it. As you guys know, cash flow is the lifeline of the business. I've dived so deep. One of the books sitting next to me here is Simple Numbers, Straight Talk. It's not my major, right? Accounting, finance, but it's had to become a part of my growth because it's a blind spot for a lot of organizations, especially in the 2 to 5 mil range of gross revenue. It's a major blind spot, and we've as a team identified that as like, okay, we got to make it through here.
Kyle, one thing I'm really interested in is the REI Summit. This has come up numerous times. We just interviewed Brandon Turner, which really pushed on this. We know Megan Ahern, the Tatty Investor, which is one of our co-hosts, is speaking. Colin Schwartz is speaking. We probably know more speakers, but you are also speaking at this event. Can you give a little plug for the REI Summit and how you had the privilege of being invited to be a speaker at this?
Yeah, I'm very excited to be one of the speakers at REI Summit there in Austin this upcoming June. It's June 1st through the 3rd. I believe it has to do with my connections and team building inside of vertical integration, which you guys have asked a lot about. We built a unique hybrid in a very tough and challenging real estate market. And so it comes from the relationships and networking events. And those are why I can't stress enough that people jump into an event like this, no matter what phase in business you're in. I believe that Ted and Owen, we met 4 years ago at a real estate meetup.
Yeah, we met at BP Con. And then, well, we've met, maybe 3 times at BP Con?
I believe 3 times. Yeah, 3 times. Like an evolution of a career. I remember when you guys had Brandon Turner on the first time.
That's why all this happened, right? It was because we met there and we just hit it off, and you were kind enough to give us a couple of minutes on video and talk, and then we kept the conversations going over the years, and that's the culmination of randomness at real estate.
This is why it's important to go.
It is, yeah.
Exactly.
I know that Owen's going to be at REI Summit. I know that we both got tickets to the BP Con. And what other events are you guys attending this year?
Me personally, I've been really wanting to go. I don't know yet is the answer.
Which one are you waving on?
I want to go to a lending networking, or like a lending mastermind group, or a conference, and there's a couple in November. I just don't have them nailed down yet because I have a kid that's in multiple sports, and I have no idea what her schedule is. That's my problem.
Priority one.
Yeah, because I won't miss those, or I really do my best not to miss those. So if it's important, I'm going to be at family stuff, and if it's something that's like not a big deal, I'll definitely go.
Yeah. What about you, Kyle? What all are you attending?
Yeah, with the newborn, I've tried to keep my schedule super clear. Just like Owen, right? Like, I know that you guys care a lot about your families, and that piece matters a ton to us. We're a faith to family organized company. That has to come first. I even felt like it was a little bit of a stretch to be asking him to go speak at the mastermind, right? My wife's going to be taking care of 3 young kids.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one. You're going to have some accounts payable in your ledger in the marriage department there. So
yes, absolutely.
But when you told her you're speaking, then that changed it a little bit.
It did. We did have a pretty in-depth conversation about it, and a little back and forth exchange on that. And she was very supportive of it. She's been with me since the beginning in this business. I briefly shared that story about her going to get a loan. She grew up 400 miles away and took a loan up here in 2015, even prior to us being married. So she's believed in the vision and the mission, and so she was supportive of that.
That's powerful. Oh, I honestly, it just makes me want to deep dive into the family stuff, but I know that we're getting an hour and a half now.
Yeah.
But we have a section that we call the OT with Owen and Ted. In this section, we have some questions we ask every person on. Sometimes we mix it up. Sometimes we keep it right along track. We just kind of play it along. But Owen, you want to ask our first question we have here today?
All right, Kyle. Your first book is about to be coming out. What's it going to be about, and what's the title going to be? And if you don't know one or the other, that's fine, but give us the gist.
Oh, man. So I personally would like to rain check this about out a decade. And the reason why, if I can.
Too far out.
If the reason why is much like what Brandon Turner has alluded to a bunch of times, run series of life or these seasons of life in a decade. I don't think I can write a book right now. I got too big of ambitions, too big of goals, and too much to accomplish that I can't write a book.
Okay. I think that's the title. I'm too busy to write a book right now. And then you talk about all the reasons why you're too busy and all the successes you've had, and then you basically break it all down. I'm too busy to write a book right now.
And then, if you hold my feet to the fire and I have to answer, the title of the book would be Do What You Say You're Going to Do. And then I'll just list 10 books after that you should start reading. And that'll be the end of the book.
That's the book. It's an appendix, basically.
Yes.
You download.
Just take all the verbiage from every podcast you've ever been on, download it in ChatGPT, and have it spit you out a little ebook.
That's an avenue of AI. I had not thought of that.
There you go.
I have this feeling that Ted he was the guy that you would get cheat sheets from in high school. Like, I feel like you're that guy. You're the Cliff Notes guy. You're the guy that you somehow got, some relationship with somebody that had access to the test that was coming up, and he would then sell them to all of his classmates. True or false?
I didn't sell them.
I knew it. I knew you were that guy. He's always looking for the shortcut.
Sorry, man.
All right, here we go.
I apologize to disappoint him. Okay, so we are on Kyle's podcast. You can interview anyone in the world today. It doesn't matter if it's real estate or business or family and faith. Who's one person you want to interview, and what's one question you want to ask?
It's a tough one. It would depend on the linchpin we're in specific to today. That would be the best guest. And
let's go today.
Today would be Hormozy. His insight in business and his relationship to other individuals in business would give him such a depth of clarity on our business and next most important step that I think he'd be a good one to interview. The specific one question, I would probably have to ask him what would be the next most important step, which would take a lot of backlog of context and a lot of backlog of conversation. But with his experience, I think that would be the most important question.
And we're okay to interview him. So if you want to give him reach out, and we'll ask him that question for you.
Hey, snippet, tag him on Instagram. I'm sure he's going to be the next guest.
The only thing, okay, here's my beef with Hormozy.
Oh, we just lost him.
I love his business content. I think he is very common sense oriented. He is able to explain pretty complicated stuff in simple terms that a lot of people can latch onto. He's written a couple of really good books. What was it? $100 million leads, $100 million deals. Maybe I'm mixing that up, but you get the gist. My problem with him is he is such a nihilist, meaning that I don't know this for sure, but it seems kind of like he's an atheist, and he's like, your life is going to blink out when you're done. Like, what does everything really matter? You're going to be gone anyway. And do you remember, does anybody even talk about the person that died 6 weeks ago or 2 months ago? Like, they're going to fade from memory. And that's my biggest, I guess, I'm not saying he's wrong. I mean, there's things that he's saying that is right, and it's very logical, but the higher power thing is absent from his life, it seems like to me. That's my only thing I would call out about that.
I would 100% agree with you. I feel the exact same way, right? We talked about a VP of loan that has passed 4 or 5 years ago, and I still cherish that relationship. And I totally agree with that in terms of, and also coming from a faith-based background and a belief in Christianity, we can't be here for no reason.
Yeah.
And that would be my argument to him.
Yeah, and he's kind of like, who cares? What's it all for anyway? He's just doing it because he wants to dominate for a while, and he's just like, but what does it really matter? That was always my problem with him. It's just like, it's just a cliffhanger or like an anticlimactic thing where he's just like, here's what I do. You guys can do it or whatever. Who cares? Because we're all going to die.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I feel like when I'm digesting like a lot of his stuff that he puts out. And I've just always felt like empty after that. I don't know. Because, I mean, maybe he has a point, but like the lack of belief.
Lacking purpose.
Yeah, lacking purpose. Yeah, that's in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Only would take that advice specific to business.
Yes.
I wouldn't, right? And that's an important part. Like, I would not go to the same podcast for my faith base or my relationship in my marriage. Like, I think that's an important part is we got to pull from everybody that you look up to. My marriage advice does not come from Hermosi and my relationship with my kids.
I'm so glad you mentioned that aspect of it too, because that is very important. And it seems like we talked about this recently where it's like you tend to, what I think it was Brandon Turner that said you're the average of the, well, he didn't say it originally, but there's this term that's thrown around a lot. It's like you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And they typically are going to be, if it's a highly successful group, it's mostly around business. But those people generally are not necessarily going to be the same people you would, want to surround yourself with if you wanted to have a successful marriage or like be a great dad or like do other stuff in your life that has nothing to do with business. I'm glad you made that point because there are influencers and people that are recognized as subject matter experts in whatever field they're in. It doesn't necessarily make them subject matter experts in every aspect of life that all of us experience. So you have to pick and choose those things, and it doesn't have to be an end all be all for one person.
Totally agree. I'm gonna share something that you may not remember. You shared with me a 2-sentencer in 4 years ago in New Orleans.
Guaranteed I don't remember.
Don't remember specific, and I still do remember the specific to in a conversation you had with your attorney, and your attorney's recommendation when you sat there in front of him, he was either attorney or your accountant, was take care of your family. Dude, I still, clear as day, still gives me kind of the chills when you said that in that moment in time.
Dude, that is so funny you said. I literally, my hair is standing up on my arms right now. Like I just got chills again because like he said that to me, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but like, holy shit. Yeah. Like I forgot about that. And now that you reminded me, it's totally like flooding back. Like that was a huge lightning bolt for me, but yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
You lightning bolted me from that conversation, right? Like I'm standing in I believe it was New Orleans. I'm standing in New Orleans, and that hit me more than anything said out of the conference. Because what's it all for? If you lose your family in the process, what's it for? And so I had to share that anyways, as we go on this little bit of a rabbit hole tangent.
It was my CPA, and he was looking at my books for one of the businesses that I have, and we were kicking ass and like really growing, and like it was our hard money lending business, Liquid Lending Solutions. Please use us. We were having a really great year, and it was year over year growth, and we were like doubling every year. And all he was doing, he was looking at, and I've been his client for 15 years. I'm a loyal guy. I typically don't move unless there's a really good, compelling reason to do it. And he's seen what I've done. And he said, unsolicited, like out of the blue. And he was like, make sure you're paying attention to your family and your spouse, because I see what your books are doing. And in my experience, I see a lot of marriages fall apart right about here. And he was pointing at like a couple years of future growth based on our trajectory. And I was like, he had never said anything at all, even remotely close to that to me. We generally just joke around and we keep it business oriented and taxes and whatever. And he said that. And I sat up and I paid like really close attention to what he was saying. And I'm like, I can't argue with it. And he gave me a couple examples, and that stuck with me really heavy. And you must have caught me right when he had that conversation, because that was definitely a lightning bolt for me.
You've said that on this podcast before, that story.
See, here we go again. We're just tossing lightning bolts around, apparently. But thank you for that. Thank you for the reminder.
Thank you.
And
that's like the nicest thing somebody's ever said to you, by the way. That out of the whole conference, that conversation was the one thing, because we always have that one thing we take out.
Yeah, it is. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. See, somebody listens to me, Ted. Okay, so all right, this is the end of the road for the Aho family, or what's the okay, this was before we aired. What's your real last name? Like if we were going back to Ellis Island, pre-Ellis Island, before the Scandinavian adventures happened from your predecessors, what was your last name before it was Aho?
It was Kudahisto. So quite a bit of a change there as we came through Ellis Island, or it would have been my grandfather's parents.
The downside, though, of being Aho, you would think a 3-letter last name would be the easiest thing in the world. You would never have to explain it to anybody, but I guarantee you get asked all the time how you spell that, don't you?
Endlessly.
Yeah.
How you spell it, how you
might
say
as well
it.
just stuck with Kudahisto.
Kyle Kudahisto. See how that's
all right. So end of the road for Kyle. Very sad. He probably has about 16 kids by now. And somebody's going to be delivering your eulogy. Very sad. What are they going to say? Who is it?
Oh man, this one's easy. As long as she's still there, my wife, she's been with me since I was 19 years old, and so we've went through what I feel like is a lifetime already together. 3 kids. I lose track of the years, but been married for quite a few, and so she hopefully would do that. It'd probably be a tough moment, but I hope she would do that. And I hope if she's going to say something, she would say that I gave for a life of servitude and gave it to everybody else. First, my family, well, hopefully her, and then my family, and then everybody else. And so I live by that. I base my calendar off of that. And I hope that's the message.
I attended a friend's funeral this week, and the husband gave the eulogy, and you couldn't ask for a better eulogy. Like he spoke for probably 25 minutes, and for the most part kept it together. Wow. This is 3 days after she passed, and went from stories to conversations. He had the room laughing, he had the room emotional, and the eulogy was so good that he had a standing ovation. Sorry. He had a standing ovation in the whole entire church. And no kidding, there was probably close to 700 people in that church.
Wow.
I've never seen anything like it. It was a great story. And kudos to him, because I don't know if I could do that way. I like to think I could, but to keep it together and tell such fun, emotional, deep stories, but also he kept it light. Like, at one point he's like, he goes, and she was only 44, and he goes, the one thing I always had to teach her was to stop flipping people off and honking the horn, because people have guns now, and that's going to get her shot. He goes, the nicest lady in the world, she's flipping everybody off.
Oh man,
it's just stories after stories, and I loved it. But the next part of this OT is the part that I think really kind of pulls from the heart. And imagine that you're talking to the person, you're not talking to Owen and I, and you can talk directly to the mentor that you had in life, the person that has lifted you up most. Who is it? And if you can speak directly to him right now, what would you say?
I'm sure you guys have choked quite a few people up with that question. For me, it's an easy one. It's my parents. They taught me the value and the impact of a strong family, most importantly, and then you can overcome anything through that. And then the impact of hard work. Both of them have always been workers. Both of them have always been doers. And that in particular could teach so much of the next generation that you can make it. Hard work won't turn its back on you. It will never do you wrong. It will never steer you wrong. And so for that, I'm forever thankful.
That's great, man. All right, let's see here. Let's do this. I'm gonna offer a bonus question here. What would be the amount of money that it would take to get you to shave your mustache and live with a bare face for 1 year?
Oh man, great question. Great question. I think it's a no deal. I think it's a no deal.
Amount of money. How long have you been rocking the stash, man?
Oh, it's 10, 11 years old.
That's great. Must be the water in Michigan.
It's got to be. It's got to be. I'm north of Flint, so it's
Kyle,
not related to the Flint water crisis.
Word for word, that was his Brandon Turner question.
Yeah, I wanted to ask him that, but then I found out somebody already asked him that before.
And then I listened to the podcast, and I was like, they offered $1 million. He said no, and he said it would take $10 million because of it's an identity thing with his image.
Yeah.
So for him, it was $10 million.
Wow. Yeah. So priceless, apparently.
Priceless. Some things cannot be bought.
I remember my dad had a mustache my whole entire childhood. And I remember I was in high school, and all of a sudden he shaved it off. And
you were like,
and I was just like, who are you? Like, first off, he looked so much younger. And then I was like, I was shocked. I was like, I've never seen you like that. And then from that point on, like, you went through this like couple years of like growing it back, and then, doing Fu Manchu, or just like, or it goes down the goat.
Is that where you got that whole nonsense you do with your facial
where
hair?
where I change it up all the time? No,
yeah.
I don't know, but now he's been clean faced for probably the last decade plus. It's funny to think that he was such a mustache guy growing up, and then now he's just clean faced.
That is funny.
All right, Kyle. Okay. What are you looking for right now in your business, or what are you excited about? And how do people find you, reach out to you, anything like that?
You know what? Instead of looking for something, we're really looking to help. We're at that phase in business, I think, much like you two guys, for doing a podcast. So connect with us. We've got a social presence. It's Fixer Yoopers, a little play on Chip and Joanna Gaines. So it's Fixer, Yoopers. It's an important distinction, because that's the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. That's what the tribe up here calls themselves. So, but we look forward to connecting. I look forward to connecting with everybody. I'm going to be speaking here at the REI Summit. I'm at a point, or we are as an organization, we want to help. We want to help the next generation. We want to help the next generation of builders, of property managers, of people that want to help other people. And so reach out, connect. I can't encourage people enough. We don't turn anybody down. We're going to talk you into buying a deal. That's always our call to action. Anybody that gets into a conversation with us is going to buy a deal. So that's how you could support the next, support us, and I guess we'll help you back.
When I met you the first time at BPCon, and then the subsequent times we talked, and then we spent some time on the phone together after that, one thing that has always struck me about you is just like, you are the salt of the earth kind of a guy, the most genuine person. It comes through in how you communicate. I can tell you're a family guy. Your true north is aligned with, faith and family and doing the right thing. And that's who we like to have on the podcast here. So really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. I'm really pumped. I had no idea that you were going to be presenting at REI Summit. That's a big deal. There's going to be a lot of people there. It's Brandon's gunning for BPCon and wants to grow it past that. So this is going to be a big event, and I'm excited to see what kind of opportunities come out of that for you in particular. So good on you, man. And you've done some super impressive stuff at a really young age, despite your baby factory that you've so.
Well, thank you both. I can't say thanks enough. Thanks for the chance, and appreciate being on.
Kyle, it's been an absolute pleasure having you. It's been great to get to know you little by little at every BPCon that we have attended. And your kindness, your faith, your family life, it just speaks novels into the person you are and the soul that you have. And we love having that right here on RIA Radio. So thank you for that. And we appreciate you. We hope to get to know you a little bit better. And then maybe I'll see you at BPCon also.
Potentially.
Okay.
Potentially.
Okay. Well, look forward to that. But with that, Owen Dashner, we see us out.
On behalf of Aiden Bear, Ted Kosh, and RIA Radio, I'm Owen Dashner, and you've been listening to Kyle, the Fixer Yoopers Deal Doctor. Aho, signing off. Aiden over here is our producer. He'll pop in. We're gonna.
Hello,
we
Aiden.
We like to sandbag him with random questions because we don't think he's paying attention. He's probably just sitting there. He's playing Galaga right now, probably.
I love it. Rogan does the same thing, man. I think that's great.
So they at least gotta know the person behind there. You gotta at least pop your head in before we start.
Yeah, come on, get over here. He gets so embarrassed. We love it. This is Aiden.
Hello, Aiden.
Sit hi.
How old does he look, do you think?
Oh, he's barely gotten the screen, but I know his relationship with property management, so I'm guessing he's like mid-30s.
Mid-30s, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 23.
23. Oh, I only saw the brim of his hat. He have a hat on. He barely got in the camera, so I'll give it to him.
Don't worry. The women think he's closer to 40.
Oh, man.